This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show from James Cook University, Singapore. Tune in as we ask experts in the industry more about their lives and their approach to success. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hi, my name is Professor Jason Pomeroy. I'm the founding principal of Pomeroy Studio and Pomeroy Academy, designers and thought leaders of sustainable built environments. Welcome to JCU Conversations, an initiative by James Cook University, Singapore, that allows us to have conversations with captains of industry to find out what the secret of their success is. And today, I'm delighted to be here with the CEO and founder of SaladStop, Adrien Desbaillets. Adrien, welcome to JCU Conversations. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Good. We are interviewing captains of industry, people who have made a real difference. And what I find remarkable about your journey with SaladStop, the founder of SaladStop, is that you really are touching people's lives. But before I get to the ideas as to how you managed to get to this remarkable position, tell us a bit about your childhood to begin with.
Quite diverse. Okay. I grew up in this part of the world, so Singapore has been home for a long time. Okay. My dad was in the hotel business, so we moved around and really just from one hotel to the next. So I got to experience all the countries in the region, different flavors, different people, and then went off to university in the US and came back. So really this has been part of my life, Asia, traveling around, working now obviously in this part of the world as well.
You were born in Switzerland?
Born in Switzerland, yeah. Born in Switzerland, supposed to be born in Africa. Okay. But then my mum, I guess, didn't really approve of the hospital, so it was a little bit more risk. So at that time, flew me to Switzerland, had me there, and then flew back.
So a remarkable sort of twin world of both Europe and
That's
Asia,
right. That's right.
Which I'm sure gave you some remarkable perspectives. And then you went off to the US to study. Where did you study?
Cornell, so Fantastic. The hospitality program.
So I guess hospitality has always been in your blood. Your father was in hospitality.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, growing up working in hotel kitchens and just that environment. Part of it was obviously amazing to just experience it, but then obviously you are part of the hotel, right? So your life obviously is that you walk through the hotel lobby every morning. And so it was an interesting childhood, but it really kind of instilled a lot of that kind of hospitality and that passion for the business and serving people and trying to improve, in our case, people's lives.
So after 4 years of hospitality school in the US, tell us about your first job. Was your first job in hospitality?
First job would have been the official shrimp peeler of the Siam Intercontinental in Bangkok.
Amazing.
Because I loved working in the hotel kitchen, so on weekends, my parents would kind of let me go there. My reward was a fried rice. So I would love to just stand next to the wok and have the chef cook and just, experience all that. So that was my first job really. And then always sort of picked up different, experiences along the way, mainly still in the hotel business, but then ventured off into finance and did internships, in different places.
Hospitality as an industry is so broad. But it's interesting that you mentioned that peeling shrimps was probably your first memory. Did you gravitate towards food and beverage? Because clearly you are the CEO of SaladStop, and I'm just wondering, this could have been a very, very different journey had that first job been something different, relating to housekeeping or something like that.
It could have, but I think the working with people, and it still being a people business, was always what I guess attracted me to hospitality. When I went off to university, I think I started seeing the other avenues that I could take. If it was hospitality, finance, real estate development, all of that. And I think that's maybe given me a different perspective once I'd graduated. That actually I love the day-to-day operations, but I also love creating concepts. Working on something that's, I guess, potentially larger, and the development part of it.
Fantastic. So the transition from shrimp peeler to then moving through the hospitality industry and then finally becoming the founder of SaladStop. Tell us a bit about that transition.
So I think that transition was one, I had always believed or had the the desire to build my own business. So I think starting something was always kind of in the cards for me. But in the beginning, I knew obviously I also just needed to have some experience. I always wanted to live in China. So, moved back to Singapore after university and then actually made my way to Hong Kong and Shanghai. Then the financial crisis hit and moved back here. My dad was also in between different consulting projects. He was sort of thinking about what retirement would look like. And that's when we started SaladStop. So I sort of roped him into this and we started this together in June 2009.
Well, I'll certainly touch on that sort of family connection in a bit. But SaladStop was arguably the first and largest healthy food chain in Asia. Can you tell us a bit more about SaladStop as a business?
Sure. So when we started, the core focus was just filling a gap in the market, right? So we saw that there was definitely a lack of healthy food options in Singapore. We knew as well that whatever we were building had to be scalable. So, we signed 3 locations before we even opened the first one. So we knew that this had to be a volume game. It had to be something that we could not only attract locals to, and obviously it was a very important piece of the puzzle, but also make sure that it's exportable. So our whole mindset, from the beginning was how do we make this a concept that's affordable, that's quick service, and that can ultimately also grow in whatever market that we're in, that's adaptable to local cuisines, local mindsets, and obviously grow within the healthy food space. Salad as a category was obviously very niche.
Yeah.
The food is amazing in Singapore, and you've got, great hawker centers, and I think, that was still very much the mindset around food at that time. So we really sort of took on the challenge of creating something that most of Singapore had never seen.
It is really quite a remarkable journey when I think about how one of the major blockers, I would imagine, is the culture of a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner. If you are so used to the staple of rice or noodles, but to then present this, as you say, niche product, the salad, how did you overcome those blockages? How did you kind of overcome that cultural perception that this is just not part of our day-to-day diet?
So I think one was in Singapore, it was becoming, around that period was definitely becoming a lot more cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
You had just a very diverse audience that you could speak to. So I think, we also targeted locations in the beginning that we knew were going to be a little bit more obvious for our product category. But then I think over time, we also made sure that the taste profile appealed to locals, right? So, we launched with a chili crab dressing. We had a lot of different Japanese salads. So we really broadened, I guess, people's view on what a salad would be. It's not a Caesar salad or niçoise or what you would find in a traditional restaurant.
Yes.
And I think when we really developed that, I think people tried it once and they thought, oh, you know what, that's not bad, and I feel great, and I can see how this becomes part of my lifestyle. When we branched out internationally, then it was a little bit different because then the gap was even wider. And I think with working with all of our local partners in each of these markets, I think we really fine-tuned the brand as well to be a little bit more lifestyle orientated. Yeah. So sometimes the design of the spaces, we went up a notch. We also worked with either local celebrities or activations that would give us a little bit more buzz. And what was interesting is in those markets, we are very much, and even today, perceived as an aspirational brand. So again, we played a little bit on that lifestyle element, but I think over time as well, developed a product that still suited the local taste. And I think that was key. The first thing we do when we open a market, we actually go straight down to the local market. We look at what the local ingredients are. How can we try to source everything, on that island or in that country?
That's really amazing. Yeah. I guess that any company that's looking to scale and move into different territories has to have this global view, but at the same time has to be able to localize it. So glocal, if you will. And the ability to then kind of think about what those unique flavors are on the ground within, say, Vietnam, within Thailand, within Singapore. I find it remarkable that you've been able to make that transition. So in terms of your expansion plans through Asia, what do they look like?
So I think I mean, we're ultimately still a Singapore company, and I guess actually very much Asian at heart. And the opportunities just in this part of the world, I think, obviously are immense. I think our key understanding of the region and how actually fragmented it is, and back to your point, how you do need to adapt to every market individually. There's really no blanket approach, I think, for Asia. I think that does give us a competitive edge. And maybe because of our upbringing here, we are adaptable, right? So we understand where we feel very comfortable landing in Jakarta or in Bangkok and being able to then suddenly switch to a different mode, right, when we're in that market. So I think the model obviously has been built that way from the beginning, but it is constantly refining it, right? And I think working with local partners is also very, very important.
That's very interesting. You touched on your father, and you mentioned that in his retirement years, he wanted to find another avenue, and this was the perfect sort of opportunity for father and son to come together to create something, which is, again, wonderful to hear. Though they do say that you should never work with family. And here I am also guilty of this, because I work with my wife. She's an architect. We have a studio together. What is it like to work with family members?
So in the beginning, it was a lot of getting used to, right? I think I knew my father as my father, and not as a businessman necessarily. I mean, I had a lot of respect for what he had done in hotels and seeing him work, as I grew up. But then actually starting a business together, understanding, the value each of us bring to the business, how to work through that, and especially when it gets quite intense in the beginning, right? You're working very, very closely, and then maybe you start branching off and focusing on different areas of the business. But in the beginning, we had to get used to each other's styles. My mother, I think, is a big part of also the inspiration behind SaladStop. So she was really the one pushing us and believing in it so strongly, even when we sometimes had our own doubts about how the business would sort of stack up. She just, there was 100% certainty in her mind that this would work. Those initial years, I think we built the business together. And again, I think, as time progressed, and my sister joined 2 years after we started, my brother-in-law joined about halfway through as well. So, then it was also an easier to transition to sort of for him to hand over the reins, right? Because I think, even financially, he put everything on the line. So, that was a big risk on his part. Mine, I mean, I was young. I could have, if it didn't work, I could have moved on to something else. Yeah. But like I said, this was his retirement plan, basically, all in the business. So, very grateful for the risk he took. It was a great ride, and he's still involved, obviously, but, has kind of now enjoyed the fruits of his labor in many ways. Yeah.
I'm curious to know how you managed that pressure, because, again, you touch on a very valid point about how youth can be on your side when you're establishing a business. But as one gets older, there is always this demon speaking to you behind saying, is this really the right time to be taking such risks? How did you manage those risks? How did you sort of satisfy yourself with the fact that you were doing the right thing, knowing too well that your father had put so much into this?
So I think a few things. I mean, for him, obviously, he had come with so much experience that he knew the different levers and where, the risk profile would lie, right? Yeah. And being able to even very closely monitor cash flow and he's been very meticulous in that sense, right? So for me, it gave me the comfort that, that part was handled, and obviously with his experience, he could keep driving that. I think I came with maybe the higher risk profile, the more of the concept and the bigger picture. But I think the most important part, I think, for us was that we were involved in every part of the business. So, even when we first opened our store, I was there every day and I was cashiering. And so, you're speaking to customers, you really understand every part of the business. And that also gives you the confidence to say, you know what, it is going to work. I just need to get these pieces right. Yeah. And I can see and you can feel every day on the ground how things are picking up and the reception that you're getting from customers. That for us was actually the best validation.
Absolutely.
And that's what kept fueling us. And taking more and more risk in many ways, right?
So as a CEO, having a true understanding from inception through to completion of a project, and also a true understanding of the operation, is key to the success of the business. And clearly, your business has been a remarkable success as it continues to grow. Now, I want to touch on another aspect of your business, which is not just about healthy eating and healthy lifestyles, but it's also the health and well-being of the environment. You're doing remarkable things, and I'm delighted to be part of this with you in terms of creating net zero stores and whatnot. Tell us a bit more about why you're getting into this game. Eating healthily is one thing, but ensuring that the climate change agenda is being addressed, and also reducing our carbon emissions is also being taken into consideration. Why are you doing this?
I mean, from the inception, we always wanted to change people's perception of food. We always wanted to have an impact on the whole food industry. I think for the last few years, we have done a lot on the sustainability front and have a lot of initiatives in the store, but we never really had an opportunity to bring that together. So this year really is our focus to say, let's not just kind of show people what we are about and what we're trying to achieve here, but let's also try to take this to a whole new level. What I mean by that is, when there's a lot of conversation about net zero now, and a lot of companies that have pledged to, be net zero by 2030 or 2050. But I think what we are looking at is, how do we look at our entire operation, the impact of our construction, our sourcing, and try to bring down that footprint as much as possible first, and then offset, and then continuously work on that. And I think that's always been a big part of our ethos, has been, we're always trying to innovate, always trying to push the boundaries, and as much as possible, try to move the needle in the customer's mind, right? And I think in this instance, I think we really will push mindsets and start challenging people to ask more about the businesses they interact with. They ask the hard questions. We're very happy to receive hard questions. We might not always have the right answer or the perfect answer, but I think that's, one of the mottos that we've always stood for, is that, we're not perfect, but we try to be better than yesterday.
That's really good. So building upon where so many stores have been, the business as usual, you're challenging the business as usual. You're coming out with new concepts. You're pushing towards zero energy. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How are you going to be approaching that, for instance, in Singapore as a city-state that is so committed to the green agenda?
Right.
How does your net zero store fit into all of this?
So, I mean, that's what we're incredibly excited about is the ecosystem that we get to play in Singapore is just fascinating. The food tech, agri-tech, that whole space, and the future of food, because that really is, actually also an imperative, is we need to really ask ourselves how we're going to feed another 3 billion people, right?
Yes.
These are challenges that, the world needs to address, and I think Singapore has a few of these solutions. So just working within that space is brought up a lot of ideas, and I think we're being sort of at the forefront of that. In terms of the sustainability agenda of Singapore, I mean, the 30 by 30 goals, the carbon tax now that they've introduced, I think is very forward-looking. And what I think is needed, though, is for the smaller businesses in Singapore to try to adopt that. I think a lot of them have that ambition, but just don't know where to start. So, if we can also play a role in opening people's eyes and just, providing a template in how to do that, I think we would really want to move, again, the needle from an industry perspective. And again, just challenge the status quo. Do we need to keep building stores the same way as we have? Do we need to keep operating them the same way? Do we need to source the same way?
That's amazing. So, SaladStop, which cities and countries are you currently in, and what are your plans for the next 5-10 years?
So we're in 8 countries today.
Wow.
And mainly in Asia. We are going to continue focusing in this part of the world. I mean, this is, our home. This is where, again, we see a lot of opportunities. So the first priority is really just going deep into the markets we're already in, because we see so much potential in those, and we're actually a multi-brand company today, and have built brands specifically to kind of cater to different segments of that market. But then we also see, a few more markets that we want to be in and sort of close the loop in this part of the world. So that's at least the next 2 or 3 years. After that, then obviously, there's some much larger markets such as China and India that we would love to be in one day. But again, we have so much to accomplish just in our neck of the woods that I think we'll focus on that.
So it looks like you're going to be scaling in terms of your human resources as well in order to be able to manage this remarkable expansion. You mentioned multi-brands. What other brands are there, and how do they fit in to the overall SaladStop Inc.?
So we launched 2 brands just before the pandemic, actually. Hebo is a warm grain bowl concept, which is all warm, and we could see that was still a missing piece because SaladStop has been very well received, but there's still always that gap where, at least within Asian cultures and cuisines, it's actually still a lot more warm options that people are looking for. And also we see that SaladStop, given its price point, starts plateauing in a few markets and it's a little bit harder to penetrate cities like Medan and Davao and those kind of secondary cities. We need a brand that's a little bit maybe more approachable in some ways. And another part is that Hebo is very communal. SaladStop is very kind of your individual, you're grabbing a salad or wrap, you're going back to the office. We needed something that would kind of help us on weekends and nights. And so, there's sort of quite a clear approach to how we were building Hebo. Wuxi is the third brand. That is a maki roll concept. So targeted at a much younger audience. We collaborate with a lot of local artists on the boxes, and it's just a really fun brand. Again, trying to get a more entry price point and positioning into healthy food. The idea for us is, how can we bring a customer on this whole journey? And if you're in university, you probably might start off with Wuxi and then graduate to Hebo and SaladStop, and hopefully that becomes a whole ecosystem that you then interact with, and the brands kind of coexist.
So it's wonderful to hear that there is something for the 7-year-old child all the way through to the 70-year-old grandparent. If the Cornell student, the Cornell Adrien, saw you today, what do you think Adrien, the Cornell student, would be thinking? Would he be thinking, this is really quite remarkable? Would Adrien have been able to predict where you are today?
Yes, in some shape or form. I think the entrepreneurial spirit was there, even in university. And I think it would have been very close to in terms of timing, in terms of where I'm in my life and the different pieces and personally and everything, just how everything has fitted in. I think the part that maybe was a bit of a question mark was I going to work with family? That obviously was hard to say. But I'm glad I did, and I think it's such an incredible opportunity to work with your father, your sister, your brother-in-law, to work so well together. It's just so rewarding.
And if you were to look back at students within the hospitality industry, what advice would you give them?
The first would be to just stay adaptable. I think the profile of people that we look for now as we hire and we scale the team are really just people that are going to have the right attitude and are willing to learn and hit the ground running. So my biggest advice would be pack your bags, move to China, move to India, experience those markets, learn, and that I think will serve people very well, throughout their career, right? So that is still, I think, fundamentally the most important part of starting your career. And then beyond that, I think, you can just see within our own industry how much that has changed, right? When I went to university, there was no delivery business, there was no delivery hero and Deliveroo. And now that's a sort of a natural extension to what you would graduate into, right? From university, you could go and work for Delivery Hero, which just didn't exist before, right? The more typical path was you go down and you work in a hotel.
Indeed. I guess as we've been talking about hospitality, food and beverage, and obviously a remarkable career, I guess we can finish with one quick fire question, and that will be related to food and beverage. If you had to create your fantasy dinner party, who would you invite to your dinner party?
Wow. Don't have anyone specifically in mind off the top of my head, but I think the definitely people that are trying to change the world in a big way, and really create long-lasting impact. Because I think that, I think to really change the world, or at least in our industry, impact the whole food system, you need sort of a pretty deep collaboration between different type of people in different industries. I think the challenge is at such a large scale that I think you're going to need a lot of minds to come together. So for me, it would be number one, that would be kind of an important criteria. And then, I guess, we operate so much in this part of the world that to have conversations around what is going on and what impact we can have, that I think for me is just incredibly exciting. I love to, speak to someone in Indonesia or the Philippines and what is going on in those places.
Well, I look forward to seeing what that fancy dinner party might look like in the future. Adrien, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today. How can we find you over various different digital platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter? How can we find you?
LinkedIn, or just email me, adrien@saladstop.com.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.